Hello, everyone. My name is Robert Casey, taking the LA Film Lighting and Shading 1 course. This is going to be my video response to our final lesson regarding what I've learned during the course. Here we're looking at one of my final submissions where I took some assets that were given to me for free from the school and applied specific lights to the scene either through source lighting or dome lighting. Here I had this telescope scene where I positioned this telescope and positioned the light to the left of the scene as to cast the shadow rightward, except in these dented in sections where the light would creep inside and show through. I failed to keep the light saturated. I played with the functions too heavily and ended up getting rid of a lot of the intensity of the original light, which I was supposed to match. On top of that, I didn't turn off the burn in mapping function when I took the photo from the final render, which made everything darker. My path tracer lightings were also set to 1 instead of 4. I learned from this that instead of messing with the lighting first, the intensity of the lighting first, I should start by correctively putting the light in the angle I need it to and adjusting the intensity from there if needed. It was also made apparent to me that I should stay away from the APR render as it uses, I might call it less effort to final render these images, as well as check my color spacing and switch it to linear instead of the default setting that it was on. This image was supposed to be a lot brighter. It's supposed to portray midday, and as if here it seems very manufactured light, as if it's being given off by a light bulb underground, and that's not really what it's supposed to look like. I did do the angling very well though. If I had the reference picture to show you, I would, but the angling is pretty spot on if I do say so myself. We'll talk about that one in a minute. In the next environment one, this one's supposed to be night. I feel less bad about the night just because this does look nightly. I could very easily think that this is like a street light or this is the moon just shining down. There is a blueness, a blue color that was lost in translation. I think it has to do with me messing around with the intensity and saturation settings. Again, this also has the issue where the burn-in mapping was applied and the path tracer lighting was set to 1 instead of 4. So in the future, I will be striving to correct those changes as I see them. Just fix this real quick because this is bugging me. That'll work. Perfect. So it's basically the same scene, except I used instead of a dome light around the architecture to have a big intense source of light, I used a source light just coming from a very flat angle in a very dark background to portray nighttime. You can kind of see, well, you can't see it, but in earlier projects when I arranged the telescope, I was able to rotate it. Just kind of showing off some of the things that I've learned in the earlier segments. I rotated it with the E tool, so it pointed up. I I translated it across the ground from inside to the outside with, I believe, the W and R to resize when needed. This is the bonus one that I did. I kind of had free reign to do what I wanted. It came out a lot darker than what it was in Maya. You were supposed to have been able to see this entryway a little bit, and something happened. I maybe copy and pasted too much, which I found out in this particular scene. There's actually a duplicate building sitting on top of itself because I copy and pasted it on accident. I will strive to not copy and paste things in the future, as I've been instructed. But somehow the glass panes here have been completely filled in, and I don't know what I've done to fix that, or what I've done to do that, and I will strive to fix it. But I kind of got like I know it's kind of silly, but it's like an angry mob kind of feel. I kind of wish there was more red here to kind of show an angry light, as if this is like Dr. Frankenstein's mansion and they're at his door. Something funky like that. But I envisioned it as a very intense and dramatic scene. Maybe a man standing here bent over the railing so the light kind of licks at his face going upwards and gives it that dramatic shading. All right. So again, those were for the environmental pieces that we were tasked in doing for the third week of the program or second week of the program, one of the two, where we were given reference photos to position light around it to mimic the photos. Then we're going to be moving on to the character, where we have this character I believe they call Nefertiti, but I could be mistaken. I have just turned everything. Sorry, Nefertiti. Nefertiti. I think that might be it. One of the issues I ran into this one is that the image rendered very grainy. I think this is where I used the IPR rendering instead of the traditional rendering, where it just doesn't focus as hard. I don't really know how to explain it. Uh, Typically, there's a lot of calculations that go into these renderings, and I have to assume that there were just corners that were cut, not as many calculations done to make this render, but it makes it faster as opposed to a long render, a traditional render, which would get rid of all this grain that you kind of see, especially in the light areas. And this is also with the issue with the burn-in mapping, and this was supposed to be, and this is 100% my bad, in a more portrait style frame, but I ended up doing landscape because I have a setting on my render settings that keeps the proportions in a specific dimension. So when I change one side of the dimension, it changes. So if I change the height to be something, it changes the width to keep the original proportion. And I just need to check that off for the future because it'll keep it landscape no matter what I do. It'll just shrink the size of the box or enlarge it. But this is the demonstration of the Rembrandt lighting, where it's basically lighting on one side of the face, and this is specifically for characters you see on one side of the face, and typically you'll see like a little triangle of light here, which was in my Maya application, but when it rendered, it kind of faded a bit. You can kind of see it right there, but for the most part, it's gone. In future renders, I will, because of the uh, video feedback I've gotten from my professor, I know how to fix this now. And we'll move on to the 3-point, which I have admittedly mucked up pretty hard. I prematurely rendered this, didn't end up saving my secondary light. So what's supposed to happen here is in a 3-point, I'm supposed to have a light here and a light over here. So it kind of leaves a highlight on this side of the face going down right here, and then you'll have the darkness kind of sandwiched between the light right there and right there. You're still kind of having the grain issue right here, and we already talked about how to fix that. And I originally did have a light here, but I ended up deleting it on accident and saving it, and I just never went back and fixed it. We'll move on to the ignore pad paracha. This one came out super dark. This was the bonus one that we were supposed to do. You can kind of see the outline of Nefertiti here. This was supposed to be a Sans-esque lighting, straight up bad time, with the blue lights emulating the eyes of the statue. And I know you super can't tell, but there's two other lights in this photo. One that kind of is right here where you can see the neck is a little bit lit up. That's supposed to go up the face, and another dimmer light coming down to kind of highlight the brow, so it darkens the eyes. This was just supposed to be another super intense scene where maybe you were in a temple, you pulled a switch you weren't supposed to, and now the statue's alive and it's looking right at you. I will remember this. There are techniques that you can use to fix your renders to where they don't come out really dark like this, and I will strive to do better in the future.